Welcome to this special edition of the Journal Editorial Report as we count down to the final primaries of the 2016 campaign season. I'm Paul Gigot, and all eyes are in California this weekend, where Democrats Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are locked in a tight race with just 2 points separating them in the latest Wall Street Journal poll. Clinton canceled campaign events in New Jersey this week to head to the Golden State, something her opponent made note of in a rally in Palo Alto.
I read the newspapers, the New York Times and the other papers, they all said the campaign is over. But then I just suddenly saw Hillary Clinton racing to California, Bill Clinton racing to California. Maybe they think this campaign is not quite over.
Joining the panel this week, Wall Street Journal columnist and deputy editor Dan Henninger, columnist Jason Riley, associate editorial page editor James Freeman, and Washington columnist Kim Strassel. So, Kim, the race is close. Why is Hillary Clinton having such a hard time closing the deal?
I'd say three things, Paul. One, she's got a cloud hanging over her head, given this ethics issue and the server problem, the Inspector General report that recently came out. Two, she's got an enthusiasm problem. People are flocking to Bernie Sanders and you see them running into the race. And finally, she's got a trust problem. Voters out there just don't necessarily think they can believe what she has to say. And all of those things are combining to give him a real boost at the end of the race.
Here's a fascinating thing, Kim. 1.5 million new voters have registered in California alone since January. I think something like 600,000 of those in the last 45 days. Bulk of them are Democrats. Are those Sanders voters, do you think?
Yeah, and they're looking as though they are Sanders voters because the bulk of them, many of them, young voters, a lot of them in demographics that Hillary Clinton had won in California before, like, for instance, Hispanics. But when they have been doing polls, it suggests that he is polling much better with some of her traditional audiences. She's keeping some of those older voters, people who were with Hillary Clinton back in 2008, but all of the new young blood is with Bernie Sanders.
Jason, this is interesting because California is a state where the Democratic Party is a huge minority proportion, not just Hispanic Americans, but Asian Americans. Yes. Yeah. And they have traditionally, this primary season, gone with Hillary Clinton. Yeah. Yeah. Why not? Why maybe not this time?
He is, well, I think for the reasons that Kim laid out, I agree, particularly the enthusiasm issue there. He is hurting her. She does have an insurmountable delicate lead, so he is not going to win the nomination, even if he wins California. But he is
putting a damper on the Bernie brigade, Jason.
He is forcing Hillary Clinton to spend time and money in California. Very expensive state to campaign in, time she'd rather be spending on Donald Trump. She can't because she's still got Bernie biting at her ankles. And she has to be very careful about how she treats his supporters, some of which who may not only stay home, but move to Donald Trump. These anti-establishment types that are very enthusiastic about Bernie, she needs their enthusiasm in November.
Well, I want to get to that argument about enthusiasm, but the delegates that Jason mentioned, that's right. Even if she loses California because of the way delegates are allocated, she's going to be leading, and she's going to say after Tuesday, I guarantee you, that I am the presumptive nominee. What is Sanders' argument going to be in reply to that?
Well, I think partly you've got all these superdelegates, which she's been counting on. Maybe at some point they start to say, we need an alternative.
But what's the argument?
Well,
what's the argument that Bernie says, I am the alternative? He's got to make that case.
The argument is Democrats don't want her to be their nominee.
Why?
Striking finding in the field poll that came out Thursday, even among self-identified Clinton voters, her voters, most of them are not enthusiastic. They are grudgingly going along, whereas you see the enthusiasm on the Sanders side. Also,
but she will have the delegates. She will, as Jason suggests, almost certainly be the nominee. So what does Sanders do to tear off those superdelegates?
Well, I think obviously an indictment would help. We talked about the email issue. If the indictment doesn't come, maybe he's playing for a role shaping policy, shaping the platform. He seems very focused on that.
I know that's what he's playing for, but what is the argument? What is the argument that Sanders is going to win?
He can win. She's going to lose.
Okay, so he's the better general election.
He's 10 points ahead of Trump in the head-to-head. She's even. If she falls 5 points behind him by July, Bernie's going to look at those superdelegates and say, she's going to lose the election for you. I can win it for you.
But every prominent Democrat is going to come out on Tuesday night or starting Wednesday, Thursday, including some progressive like Elizabeth Warren, and they're going to say, Bernie, time to leave, mate. Time to get out. And the force of the Democratic Party is going to say, let's unify. You've had your moment in the sun, several months, get out. How does Bernie withstand that pressure?
Well, Bernie being Bernie will simply stand up against it. But look, she has got she has raised a lot of money. She has a huge fundraising mechanism all over the country. She has hundreds of people on the ground already in states like Florida and Ohio. It's going to be hard for Bernie to duplicate that. The Democratic Party regulars understand that.
Kim, do you agree that all the Democratic bigs are going to come out next week after California, win or lose for Clinton, and say, Bernie, time to get out?
United, but they're also going to have to be very careful, Paul, because those Bernie supporters are behind Bernie, and they cannot risk offending them. You know, there was an interesting poll out this week that showed about half of Hillary Clinton supporters say that they would enthusiastically support Bernie Sanders were he the nominee. Only about a quarter of Bernie Sanders supporters said that they could support Hillary Clinton. So you got to treat these people gently.
Why would Sanders want to stay in? What would he, right through the convention? Why stay in? I mean, what's he looking for?
So, I mean, again, there's what he'll say publicly and then what he won't say. What he won't say is that he's going to stay there in case something does happen with an indictment and Hillary Clinton becomes, she just gets drummed out of the race. But his argument is going to be, look, none of this is over until the delegates have all voted on the day, and I am going to be there. I'm going to influence who the vice presidential candidate is going to be, and I am going to influence what the party platform is in the end. And he feels that he can only do that if he is there and still a threat to her at the convention.
All right, Kim, thank you. Still ahead.